A skeleton is made up of multiple bones, and these bones provide hardness, rigidity, and the erect nature in a person. Now, what provides the flexibility in our body? See, this young little boy is arching on his back, or this young little girl is completely stretching her legs. So what is responsible for this flexibility? Because we just discussed that bones provide rigidity and hardness to the body. Well, yes, bones are not responsible for this flexibility, but it is the point of contact between two bones, which is known as the joints, which is responsible for this flexibility. See, there are multiple joints in our body, like this elbow joint, the knee joint, or the hip joint, and these joints are movable and cause flexibility to our body. Now, let us focus on this joint, the joint between the shoulder bone and the arm bone, as well as the joint between the hip bone and the leg bone. Let us see how do these joints look like. Well, see, the rounded end of the arm bone completely fits into the socket of the shoulder bone. And this joint that is why appropriately named as the ball and the socket joint. Now, this ball and socket joint is not only present in the shoulders, but it is also present in our hips. See, the rounded end of the leg bone completely fits into the socket of the hip bone. So this is the hip bone, which looks like a butterfly, and it provides protection and it guards the organs, just like the shoulder bone does. So these type of bones are known as girdles that provides protection or guards the organs. And this bone that is present in the shoulder is known as the pectoral girdle. And this hip bone that protects the organs in front of it is present in the hip and is known as the pelvic girdle. Now, the pectoral girdle and the pelvic girdle contains these ball and socket joint, and these ball and socket joint are freely movable joint. How? Because they cause complete 360-degree movement. Let us see how. See, you can completely rotate your arms 360-degree. So this joint provides complete movement, and hence it is a freely movable joint. Now, what about your wrist or your ankles? Can you completely move them? Well, no. See, when you try to move your wrist, you will find a hindrance after rotating it through a few degrees. Well, that is why it is not a freely movable joint, but a partially movable joint. Because this joint allows partial movement, but not complete 360-degree movement. Now, what is the reason for this partial movement? Well, let us see. See, our wrist is made up of multiple small bones. These small bones glide over one another, and it also restricts the movement of one another. See? And that is why it cannot completely move, but it causes partial movement. Now, just like the wrist, which is made up of multiple small bones, even our ankle is made up of multiple small bones which glide over one another to cause the partial movement. And since these small bones restrict the movement of each other, it is a partially movable joint. Now, these bones glide over one another, and hence this joint gets the name gliding joint. Now what about this movement? Well, yes, even this is a partially movable joint because you cannot turn your head backwards. So, this joint is known as the pivot joint, and it is present between the skull and the vertebral column, and it causes partial movement. Now, you've often heard your grandmother or your grandfather complaining of immense pain in their joints. Now, what causes this pain? Well, let us see. Joint is the point of contact between two bones. Now, while walking or while running, the bones will rub against each other, and that will cause tremendous amount of pain. So to prevent that, we have a fluid present in the joint or between two bones, and this fluid is known as the synovial fluid, and it provides lubrication to the joint. By lubrication, I mean it reduces the friction between the two bones. So, because of the synovial joint, there is free movement in the joint. Now, what happens during progressive aging is that the amount of this synovial fluid gradually decreases. Now, if this fluid decreases, then the end of bones will come close to each other and will start rubbing against each other while movement, and that causes the pain in old age. So synovial fluid causes free movement in the joint because it lubricates the joint and prevents the friction between two bones. See, this joint that is present in our elbow is movable because of the synovial fluid present between the two bones. Now see, this bone is hinged at one end. And just like the pivot joint and the gliding joint, it is partially movable. You cannot completely turn your elbow joint backwards. So it only causes movement in one direction, just like doors do, which are hinged at one end and moves in only one direction. So this joint is appropriately named as the hinge joint because it is hinged at one end. Now, at a joint, two bones are free with respect to each other, but to facilitate movement, the two bones need to be connected. So what provides the connection between two bones? Yes, see? This elastic fibrous tissue, known as the ligament, connects two bones. This is what bone looks like histologically. See, there are many scattered cells, and there is a tremendous amount of matrix which is impregnated with calcium and phosphorus, and these are responsible for the immense hardness and rigidity of the bones. Now, just like the bones, look at this tissue. Even this tissue has a lot of scattered cells and an abundant amount of matrix. But the difference is, unlike the bones, the matrix does not contain an abundance amount of calcium. And since calcium is the reason that is behind the hardness and rigidity of the bone, this tissue is softer. It is not as hard as the bones. This tissue is present in our ears and at the end of long bones. And the matrix contains a lot of proteinaceous elastic fibers which causes the flexibility. See, these elastic fibers causes the flexibility to that part. This tissue is known as the cartilage. So a human skeleton consists of bones, ligaments, which is the tissue that connects to bones, as well as cartilage, which provides elasticity or flexibility to the part where it is present. Now, for so long, we have discussed about freely movable joints, like the ball and the socket joint, as well as partially movable joint, like the hinge joint, the gliding joint, and the pivot joint. Now, can you tell me a name of a joint which is not movable at all? Even immovable joints are present in our body, and it is present in our skull. See, if you look at this picture carefully, you will see that there are multiple bones that make up the skull. And see, the multiple bones are completely and rigidly connected to each other by immovable joints. Now come on, let us try and identify the different types of joint in our body. There are freely movable joints which are present, yes, in the pectoral girdle and the pelvic girdle. This joint is known as the ball and the socket joint. So freely movable joint is the ball and socket joint present over here and here. Now what about partially movable joints? We've talked about 3 partially movable joints. Try and name all the 3. Yes. One is present in our elbows. It is known as the hinge joint. One present in our wrist and our ankles, which is known as the gliding joint. The hinge joint is also present in our knees. And finally, the third partially movable joint is present between the skull and the vertebral column, and it is known as the pivot joint. Now we just discussed about the immovable joint. Yes, you guessed it right. It is present in our skull. It has immovable joints so that it cannot cause any movement in the skull.